John, come here. You ready to jump? All right, good evening, everyone. We've still got some folks coming in, but it's 6:30, and I know that a lot of you have other duties tonight as parents and things to do, so we want to be on time and get started. And I first want to thank you for coming tonight. We had no idea how big a crowd that we were going to have. As you can see, we are going to record this meeting. We will play this information back in the morning once we get it set up and sent to our district website and our district Facebook page. But I want to first say thank you for coming. I know it's been some very challenging times for our county and our country and our state. We've been out of school from March until May, so we've missed 3 months of school, and that's a day of school. Missing a day of school is important, much less missing three months of school. So we have worked extremely hard this summer in trying to make plans that could possibly change, but we're trying to make the best plans we can for our students and our community. And so I've been sharing updates with you and the community. I hope you've been getting those. If not, I'll be glad to get you a copy tonight of the 3 updates that I've been given since in July. We continue to provide information that will allow you to make a decision for your child. Before we get started tonight, there's a couple of folks I want to recognize that may want to say a few things. And first is our school board chairman is here tonight, Mr. Ron Ash. And I appreciate his support for being here, and I'm going to ask him to come up. And then we have some others here that in a few minutes will be addressing specific things about distance learning and the way things are going to happen this coming school year. Mr. Ash.
Thank you, Michael. As Michael said, thank you all for coming. We greatly appreciate the support that we have in the county. And we just want to reiterate to you that we're all in this together. We're all in brand new territory, and we're going to get through this. And all this information, we know it's a work in progress. And I want to be very complimentary of Michael and all the supportive staff that have worked on this. You can't believe the countless number of man hours that have been put in already to try to make this happen. And it's all for the safety of your children and the education of your children. We greatly appreciate it. As Michael said, we're always open, we're always available for questions, comments, concerns. And we just want to let you know that the Hardin County Board of Education is trying to do everything we can to keep the children of Hardin County educated and safe. And I think we're on the right track. And we appreciate it, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. There's some others here that will be speaking in just a few minutes, but I want to go ahead and share some general information with you. And then the main thing tonight is, I think it's important, is that we answer any questions that you have. So what we will do is we will, toward the end of this, we will have the opportunity to ask any questions you have. And if you don't want to ask a question in front of everybody, we'll hang around when it's over and certainly be glad to meet with you one-on-one for any questions. So I'm here for the duration until the last person leaves and try to answer all the questions, okay? So right now there's 2 options is what we're looking at to go to school. We're looking at starting school on time, August 3rd, with a modified schedule for the first week of school. And I have put that information out there for those that want to send their child to school. Obviously, with you being here tonight, you're interested in the distance learning option. That's what I want you to know tonight, first of all, is distance learning for our school system and most all rural school systems that I know of is a brand new thing. It's something that we're learning as we go. Our teachers have had a good training on Google Classroom is the format that we're going to be using, but it's going to be a new way of teaching for our school system, for many school systems. But what I pledge to you tonight is we'll get through this, we're going to have to work together, and we'll make it happen, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is what's best for your child. And we want the best for your child as well, and I assure you that. So we're looking at those 2 options. And again, to me, as I sit and think about what's going to be the key component on making our distance learning option work is cooperation, patience, and willingness to work together. That's going to be key. Also, of course, in distance learning, as we talk about that, we talk about devices. We talk about if you have a laptop, iPad, or some type of device that has a browser on it that will allow you to get to the internet. There may be parents, as we have seen on registering in our registration for distance learning, that does not have access to the internet or does not have a device. So then that would go to what we would have to work with there would be paper packets. We would work with you with paper packets. So distance learning is still an option for you, for your children, if you do not have the internet or you do not have a device. I will tell you that our school system has, like all school systems, been awarded what they say is what they call as CARES Act funds for the COVID pandemic, and we have ordered 2,650 laptops. As you can imagine, the demand for laptops for schools across the country is tremendous, and the earliest that they say that we will receive those is mid-November. So it'd be very important, if you're wanting to go distance learning option to start the school year, that you have a device or you have access to a device that has a browser that gets you to the internet. And we'll talk more about that through the academic piece in just a little bit of what that's going to look like. There's also some important things that I want you to keep in mind on distance learning. It's going to be tough. It's going to be much more work for parents and who you have at home that are working with their child. But all the conversations that I've had with the calls and the emails, I totally get it. I understand. There's certain circumstances that you may have someone at your home that is health reasons that you have concerns. You may have concerns, obviously, for sending your child to school, so I understand that. And that's why our system wants to offer the option of the distance learning so that parents can have that choice. And it's a serious choice to make, and we understand that. Much more accountability now from the state on distance learning. You know, when we called school off in March last year to May, that hit on a Monday, on the 16th. Never forget it as long as I live. And we canceled school about noon that day, and we announced that school would be closed the next day. And I was thinking it would be for about a week or two, and we hadn't been back to school yet. So that ended up being 3 months. So the state, that hit us, we didn't realize that was going to happen like that. The state didn't either, so there wasn't any accountability really for that like there is now. So much more accountability, attendance, grades, everything like that. The state is going to expect our distance learning students to put in 6.5 hours a day. That doesn't necessarily mean in front of a computer. That means just learning, just 6.5 hours of learning each day. And there'll be more explanation about attendance and the grades like that in just a little bit. What I want you to be aware of is a couple of things on the distance learning. If you choose to go distance learning, we need to know that by this Friday at 4 o'clock. Many of you have probably already registered, and if you've already registered, then you don't have to do anything else, if that's the route you want to go. If you have not registered, and you want to go the distance learning, we need to have that registration in by 4 o'clock Friday. There's a ton of planning to do once we cut that timeline off after Friday. We'll be working through the weekend and all next week making these schedules. I think right now we're up to just over 500 students in our school system, of 3,500 students that have parents have said they want to look at going to the distance learning option. So that's 12, 13, 14% of our total student population. So that's a lot of planning. And that's a lot of work in the next week or so getting those schedules ready. So the deadline to apply is 4 o'clock Friday. What I want you to know, and I don't know that this has been on my part communicated as well as it should have. If you want to send your child to school, and you want to start school in August, like the traditional schedule, let's say you start August 3rd that week, and about 2 weeks in, a month in, 6 weeks in, you have a change of heart, and you want to change your mind. You can take your child out and go to distance learning. So once you start distance learning, though, if you start distance learning, it's going to be for a minimum of a semester. So you have to stay in it through December. But if you start school and you go a week or two and then you change your mind or you think things aren't like they should be, then you can pull your child out and go to distance learning at that point. Okay? So there's kind of a little bit there to understand. Maybe some questions in a minute on that. Keep in mind, if parents wish to send their child to school, and I just told you this, and you change your mind in the first semester, anytime in the first semester, you can pull your child out, but they would have to stay in the distance learning for the remainder of that semester. If come November, December, you think things are better, you have a change of heart, and you want your child to come to school, then we start second semester January 5th. And that would be the time that you're certainly welcome to send your child back to school. If at that time you still want to remain distance learning from January to May, you don't have to do a thing. You just keep going like you are, and your child can stay distance learning from January to May. Okay? Students in distance learning may still participate in after-school extracurricular activities. So for elementary, what I'm talking about would be, for instance, if they make the basketball team, or if they make the bowling team in elementary, we do have those sports available. They would still be able to participate in extracurricular activities after school like that. Also, breakfast and lunches are always something that we worry about for our children to be able to eat and have food. For our distance learning students, lunches and breakfast and lunches will be available. We're still working specifics out on that, but our plan currently would be that they would be served on Mondays, somewhere mid-morning, and what we would do would be that parents would be responsible to come get the breakfast and the lunch, and it will be for all week. So you'll get 5 breakfasts, 5 lunches for the entire week. It would be on Monday morning, probably around 10 o'clock, 10 to 11. And it would be to the school. We're working out what school you would go to get it. More than likely, it would be to the school where your child would be zoned to if they were going to school. And a couple of other specifics we're working out. If you have 2 or 3 children in our school system, if you have one, say here at Northside, one at middle school, one at high school, we're not going to ask you to go to all 3 schools to pick up breakfast and lunch. We're going to work it out where you can get it in one school. We're going to try to accommodate you on that. All those specifics haven't been worked out yet, but we certainly want, our school system is in the CEP program where everyone eats free breakfast and free lunch. So we want to continue that and offer our free breakfast and free lunch for all our students, whether you go traditional schedule or whether you go distance learn. So there'll be more information on that, but please know it will be available. At this time, I've got a few other just quick things, and we're going to switch gears a minute. I'm going to ask Mr. Greg Wyatt to come up. He's going to give you some academic information on distance learning. Mr. Wyatt is our academic supervisor at K-12, and he's put together a PowerPoint presentation for you here that will give you some information on the distance learning piece. Mr. Wyatt.
Well, what I'm going to share with you today is I'm going to just try to give you a glimpse of some things that we're hoping that everything works out, that we're building right now, and give you a format of how it could work. But one of the first things I want to talk to you about is, I know it may be hard to see, but there are things, if you look at a traditional, whether you're in the school or whether you're distance learning, there's still things that you've got to keep doing both ways. So whether I'm in traditional school or whether I'm in distance learning, I have to make sure that I provide you access to the Tennessee state standards. And so everything that you're doing at home will have reference to the standards, just like the kids have that are sitting in the classroom. The second thing is that your child will have access to the high-quality instructional materials. So every textbook that we have in our system, math, ELA, science, and social studies for grades 3 to 12, and for our ELA and math, K-2, we have access to it online. So your kids will be able to log into any textbook that we have through the internet. So you can make sure that you will have access to everything there. Kind of go back down here. The next thing is instructional day is 6.5 hours. When you go to a traditional school, you show up at 8 o'clock, you get out at 3, you have about a 30-minute lunch, 6.5 hours of instruction. Now, that doesn't mean that your child sits in front of a computer for 6.5 hours. Same thing in the classroom. Teacher may lecture. I'll use the elementary. If you had an hour and a half for an ELA block, you might spend 15 or 20 minutes doing a read aloud. Then they may do some work. They may do some small groups. So your actual activities that you would do at home would represent that same thing. So that's why it's going to take not just the child, but also the parents when you start talking about this distance learning. But it'll all be laid out with you. So when we take that 6.5 hours, you've got a lot of multiple subjects that you would have. And we'll have things on there that they can do for creative dramatics, things that they can do for PE, some suggestions that you can go out and do with your child. So that's what makes up the 6.5 hour instructional day. So don't think that you have to just actually stay there for 6.5 hours in the classroom looking at a computer, because nobody can do that. We'd all fall asleep or something if you have 6.5 hours at it. All right, the next thing is benchmark testing is required. There are things that your child will have to take testing-wise. And so that means that we will have to schedule with you that you will have to come to a school, and we'll have to work that out with you. So we have some easy CDM testing that we have to do with the children. We have to make sure that we're benchmarking our students, that they will have to work some time out, and we'll have to bring you into the school, but we'll set those times for you to be able to come in. At the very beginning of the year this year, the state is going to give us a pre-assessment test. It's kind of where we can determine what gaps we have in our students from the prior year. We let out in March. So they want us to test everybody to find out where they are so we can start building some plans to try to catch them up, especially in math and ELA. So that's something else that you will have to bring your child in. We're hoping grades 2 through EOCs, but we definitely know it's grades 3 and above. But we don't know about second grade yet, so we'll get with you on that. So, but do keep in mind that we will ask you to come in to do some testing. That you'll have to do that. That'll be required even in the distance learning. We'll have to make those appointments. And then we've got the state testing. So if the state test this year, the 10 ready test that we do every year, you will have to come into the school to take those tests, because those are proctored and those have security issues, and the students will have to be in the school taking those tests. We have that rule right now. If a child is homeschooled, there's certain grades that they have to come in to the school to take those in the course test, or the 10 ready test as well. So keep that in mind, that even though when you're distance learning, you will have to take the 10 ready test, and they will have to be taken at the school because of security issues. So make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And then instructional delivery. If I'm in a regular classroom, if I'm in the school, there's a lot of different deliveries that I'm going to get. I can I'm gonna have a teacher in front of me. I could have peer tutoring. I can have videos. I can have audio. Everything when I'm in what they call a brick and mortar school. Now, when I go distance learning, you're not going to have access to a teacher in front of you every day. Okay, so the meaning of transmitting the lessons, we talk about an instructional day in a distance learning is going to be digital or by phone. Okay, so some people that do not have internet access or do not have a device or some way to make contact if we're delivering paper packets, we still have to deliver a means of communicating with that student how to do that work. Okay, which is not the best thing in the world. I'm being as honest as I can with you and as open. Nothing substitutes being in front of a teacher in any type of learning. But we're in a different time right now when we understand the health issues. But as far as academically, nothing beats being in front of a teacher or what you can get. So keep that in mind on distance learning. And when your child is doing the distance learning, we're not guaranteed that the person that they're getting the lesson from could actually be the teacher of record for them in that actual school. Okay, so I may be a student that lives in the West Hardin area that I'm doing distance learning, and the platform that we're building may have a teacher doing a lesson that might be a teacher from East Hardin. Or it might be a teacher that we found somewhere that can deliver this in a real good way, that we can show that video so the kids can actually see the instruction. So that's the difference in distance learning. You're not going to be guaranteed to see one of our teachers in front of you all the time. So make sure that we're understanding that component of it. And then you're going to hear a lot of this right here, what they call asynchronous learning and synchronous learning. Asynchronous is where students and faculty are not required to be online at the same time. Okay? That's basically, there are going to be options. There's going to be times when you can communicate back and forth with a teacher in our school buildings, but there's going to be, most of your distance learning is going to be asynchronous, where they're not going to be online at the same time. So you could be working 8 o'clock in the morning, and one of our teachers may not have planning period until 10 o'clock, and then they're going to have office hours that you would be able to call in and say, hey, we need some help. And that's going to be available to you, but it may not be at the exact same time of the online instruction. So keep that in mind. And synchronous just means that they are required to be in front of each other. A lot of colleges are synchronous learning. Basically, the professor and students are face-to-face. They got the audio, and that's what we mean by synchronous. You know, we're a small rural area, and we're not to the point where we can go out and hire that many new teachers just to say, hey, you're going to run a distance learning format, and you're going to be in front of teachers, we're going to put it up there. You're talking about hiring many more teachers to be able to do that for the distance learning. So making sure that we understand the two routes between the distance learning and that. I didn't want to give people a false impression that, hey, I'm going to be able to log in and I'm going to see Miss Jill Willoughby teaching every day. You know, that's not the way this distance learning works. So just making sure that we're there with it. And then, but we're hoping we do have the access to provide some of that. And the synchronous, we got Zoom and different things that they could actually, you know, do a Zoom meeting with a bunch of students and just say right in front of you to check on and to do the lesson. So there are times we can do the synchronous, but not all time that we'll be able to do it. And then the last thing is that you have to adhere to all the grading policies. Just like you were in school, the grading policies for what's happening online will be exactly the same thing as well. All Hardin County School Board policies that deal with grading and education and the academics will all be adhered to, whether I'm distance learning or whether I am in a traditional brick and mortar school. So that's kind of the overall scope of it. So what I thought I would do tonight is I'm going to show you a couple of PowerPoints that kind of gives you a little briefing of what a format might look like. And again, whether I'm in elementary, whether I'm in middle school, whether I'm in high school, it's going to look different. It's all because we have to use the personnel that we have and take what we have and use the resources that we have. So what the middle school is doing, their distance learning may be totally different than what the elementary is doing, the way we have to deliver it. So keep that in mind on the way we're building our platforms. So I'm going to change over here. Okay, this would be, I think Ms. Katrina's here, so I hope I don't embarrass her too bad tonight. But this would be an example of a child logging on to a Google Classroom. And Google Classroom is it's like a housing for all of our distance learning. And so every student will have a Google Classroom account. So it'll be through an email, but we can't do those until we get all the kids registered and find out who's going to be in here so we can set the schedules. So that's what it's going to look like. And this would be a platform. So a student would go in. If I'm a 5th grade student in whatever school I'm at, if I'm distance learning, I would log in to my Google Classroom. I would go to 5th grade ELA. Here, this is just one for Ms. Katrina that's showing what she's doing in her traditional classroom. But this same format is going to be set up for, it would say, maybe Hardin County 5th grade ELA is what it would say. So that's what you would be working on. And inside of PowerPoint, there's a lot of things you can do. Like I know in Ms. Katrina's, if I were to click in that 5th grade box, it's going to show me what all the Tennessee state standards are. If I go over here on this little desk, if I were to put my icon on that computer, it's going to take me to an IXL program. It's going to take me to a link that's going to be able to work some things in IXL. If it's going to ask me to do some coloring, I can click on those little colors right there, and it would take me to a link that I can use to color something if I'm asked to do that at the elementary level. And then also in this one, over here on this bookshelf are actual books that if you clicked on, it would take you to a site where you could actually have that book for the kids to read if you didn't have one at home. So those are just some of the things that you would see when you got into the virtual. So just this first page shows you as a parent and as a student a lot of trainings got to go on. So we have to train not only the students, but we have to make sure the parents are going to understand how to get into Google Classroom, how to get on PowerPoints, how to use them, and the instructions. So there's a lot that's got to go into place in a short period of time. So that's kind of what the state's done to us. So all of this would kind of start out, everybody would have an opening page. All right, and then the way we're building these is, this would be a check mark for every child that would have some type of a slide that would look like this. Just have day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just for you to keep a running total, I've completed all the work for day 1. I've completed all the work for day 2. So this is what we would have. And this would be, we're trying to keep this consistent with all the slides we make, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. We're trying to build a format to where it's the same. Now, elementary teachers are a lot different than high school teachers, okay? Elementary teachers will put all the bells and whistles and cutie things and all that stuff, and for a high school teacher, may just give you just a slide, okay? So, understand the difference, because elementary teachers are very creative, very artsy, so you're going to look at different, they're not all going to have this look. And then what we're trying to do here, every slide will have the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It'll tell you what we're doing on Monday, what assignments are due on Monday. Tuesday, what assignments are due on Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and everything will be done inside the Google Classroom. You will work it, save it, download it, whatever. Everything is done in Google Classroom that comes back to the teacher. So there is no paper transaction between you and the teachers. You're gonna do it all there and submit it back into the classroom. So you'll have this. All right, and then the next one, this will start day 1. This is kind of the format we're wanting to use. Day 2, because we always have to tell you what we want to do, what we want the kids to do each day. So each day is, I can discuss the skills needed, I can recognize and read, I can listen to and respond to. So it's going to tell you what is expected of your child every day. These are the objectives they need to accomplish that day. And because ELA is built on essential questions, that's a word that you're going to see a lot when you're working in ELA. And then there's always going to have the standards that you can see how it fits into Tennessee State standards. And then we actually get into some work. And these PowerPoints will be where a child can actually get in there and type into the PowerPoint. You'll be able to do your work in these. So making sure that you do that. This will be one that they go back, and then that would be one that we completed. They did it. It shows you kind of what they were expecting out of you. And then here's another, this tells them what to do. Read, look at the cover of the book, and make a prediction. And it actually gives you some work you've got to do on the side of there. It's asking you to make a prediction or fill in. So this would be a work. This is just an example of a teacher modeling a writing sample that they want the student to look at, say, hey, read mine. And then the next slide would say, okay, you read mine, now let's let you talk. Let's let you write. So that would be one example. And then it's your turn to read. This teacher put a timer. They said they want you to read for 15 minutes from a textbook you might have at home, or it could be a link that they're giving you an actual textbook there to read. Or also, like this one, Miss Katrina had, if you do not have a book at home, go back to her first page and all those books, pick one of those out that you might like and read it for 15 minutes. So you're going to have these options. And then here, it's your turn to write about the book you just read. And here are some examples of a lesson. This will be a grammar lesson. And I want to show you that there was a link that was put into this. So maybe this will pull up here for us. It's not open anyway. That would take you to a video of a teacher teaching that grammar lesson. And so the child would sit there and watch the teacher teach and listen and explain what that objective was that they would have. So maybe Mr. Robbie can get it where it'll show here. So you can see there the teacher is. It's not one of our teachers. It's just a teacher somewhere that's going to explain how to use it and what the grammar is. So you're going to actually get a teacher in front of you on board, and that's about a 10 or 15 minute little video that they can watch to get that instruction that they need. And you're not having to do it, you're actually seeing a teacher do it. Okay? So, great job, you finished day one. And so, but there's some other closures, exit tickets and things. This is just a prototype. This is not the real thing. This is just something that we're trying to give you a look at what it's possibly going to look like. So you can see why you need access to a computer, because if you just have an iPhone, some of this stuff's not going to pull up on the phone. And so that's what the distance learning will look like. So it's going to require some time. And that's just the LA. And you've got math, you can have science, you can have social studies. So you've got all those subjects. You've got PE, you've got creative dramatics. So you can see where that 6.5 hour day, it's going to take some commitment. And one of the biggest things that I guess we struggle with is you can't get behind. Because if you get behind, it's hard to catch up. As you know, family and everybody, we all get busy. So just keep that in mind. Mr. Davis talked about the accountability. It's going to be more on we've ever asked, on parents, on us as school system. We're here to help. And our plan is teachers are going to have planning periods, and they're going to have office hours. So your child, whoever your child has as a distance learning teacher, they're going to have some office hours that you're going to be able to reach them to say, hey, we're really having a problem with this. Can you help me? And I know you're probably going to have some technical issues, and we're working on all of that. So it's new to us. We're learning. We're trying to get it worked out. I've been in education for 30 years, and never would have I dreamed that something like this was going to happen. So that's kind of gives you just a little bitty bit of what's out there. But we've got to do this for the whole county, for every grade, every subject. And you can see the work that it's going to take to build this in our teachers. So we ask for patience. We're going to do the best we can to get it out there. We're going to try to stay ahead of you building this. So we just wanted you to make sure that you understand what it's going to look like. But it is going to take time, and we're going to try to stay ahead and start building this. But it is not something that is easy. I'll just be as honest as I can. It's not as easy as a kid being in front of a teacher. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I want Mr. Ryan Miller, if he will, to come real quickly. And I asked him just to kind of touch on attendance and how that works for distance learning. Mr. Miller is over our student services. And welcome, Mr. Miller.
Hey, good evening. Real quick, I just want to go over a few things attendance-wise. I want to reiterate what everyone else has said, that we're all in this together, and we'll get through this. It's tough times. I do want to talk to you. I do not have all the answers yet, but I can give you some ideas of what this is going to look like from an attendance standpoint. Attendance will be taken. I know some of you sitting in here do have internet access and are going to be able to access what Mr. White was just showing you, but there's some that possibly don't, and that is going to be by packets. Both will be monitored for attendance. Now, what we're going to do, and again, I can't tell you who it's going to be, but if you have a student, whatever school they're at, there will be a faculty member that is responsible for their attendance. And it will look something like this. If your child logs on for the day and does work and completes their work, that's going to be counted as a present day. It will be monitored daily. If they log on, let's just go to the other extreme. If they log on and don't do any work by the end of the week, that faculty member is going to go to the principal and say, well, they're logging on, but they're not getting their work completed. If they're doing it by packet, then there will be a due date when the work is supposed to be done, and then there will also be calls or emails during the week. So I guess in a nutshell, essentially completed work, and obviously academic performance, but most importantly I would say is completed work is going to be a large portion of this. And teachers are going to be monitoring, and the administration is going to be monitoring. Real quickly too, I want to go over, you can go to our website. If you have returning students, you may have been there before, but the board policy's there. It's Board Policy 6.2002, 6.2002, that explains the difference between an excused and an unexcused absence. We will be remote learning students, which will be your students, must adhere to the same policy. In the policy, it states that you get 3 call-ins. Let's say your child gets sick and you don't take them to the doctor. You'll need to call the school. You can do that 3 times a semester. Otherwise, we'll need a doctor's note as to why they didn't do their work on that day. And obviously, if they have a doctor's note, that's excused. Okay? So, same reasons. There's excused and there's unexcused reasons. So, I just want to make sure everyone understands that. Truancy is still going to be monitored. If I get a call from a school that a student has, they'll make a phone call first if your student starts missing days, not doing their work. And then, once you get to 3 days unexcused, you'll get a letter from the school, and after that, at 5, it will start the truancy process. That's where likely to be a phone call, where in the past it was a meeting set up at a school, but it would be a phone call. I would give you a call, just more or less to see what's going on, see what we can do to help, and we would start our tiered truancy process. So I can tell you that, like I said at the beginning, we're still ironing out some details. I hope that helps you a little bit, just to understand that we know the importance of doing something every day, and we believe that students must do something every day unless they're sick. So I wish you the best of luck in this. It's going to be tough, I think. I admire you for doing it, because I don't know how successful I would be at it, but I do hope and pray that it goes well and that everybody stays well, and hopefully this is a short-term thing. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Davis. Sure.
All right, it's been a lot of information. We've been talking for about 45 minutes, so we want to stop here and pause and answer any questions you have. What I want you to know from the bottom of my heart is I appreciate you being here, and your child's education is your choice. I mean, you really have 3 choices. You could parental homeschool and not be involved in our school system. You can go the distant option learning, if you so choose, where we can help you provide the education, provide a certified teacher, or you can do traditional school. The traditional school, the learning option, is no cost to any of you. And we want you to stay in our school system. We hope this mess gets out of here soon, and everybody feels comfortable coming back to school, and we get back to business as usual. But until then, there has to be some safeguards put in place, and we certainly felt like there has to be an option for parents to choose what's best for your child. But I assure you, we want to work with you. We want you to stay in our school system. We want to offer this distance learning as an option where you have a certified teacher working with your child, or the traditional schedule is available. I'll answer questions on the traditional schedule, or I'll answer any questions you have at this point. Yes, ma'am. You can finish early. It's very flexible on distance learning. So it may be that you want them to go outside and do some kind of project outside or inside. So once you get through with the lessons that has been provided on the distance learning side of it, then anything supplemental would be fine. It's a good question. Yes, ma'am. Feedback, that's a good question. Mr. White, of course, email, depending on the age of the child, email with the teacher is an option. Phone call is an option. And then they should, if you're doing actual, and make sure I'm telling this correct, if you're actually connected to the internet and you're doing online, you'll get feedback through the Google Classroom.
Yeah, but basically when you set the classrooms up, you're going to have interaction between the teacher and the students. So when they're doing work, they're submitting work, they're grading it just like everything else and giving that feedback. Also, any point in time, there's a chat that a student can
talk, converse back and forth with the teacher, their teacher of record, inside the Google Classroom. So the feedback is gonna come from phone calls, and I can tell you this much, I can give you an example from middle school. The way the numbers are gonna work out, there's a possibility we could take a complete team and say, we're gonna put all the distance learners on one team, and so as they rotate, or the teachers are rotating out the students this year, but let's say I'm a 7th grade math teacher. So if I'm on a block schedule, at one point in time, all the distance learners that are at the middle school of the 7th grade are going to be in my class. So I'm going to have a whole hour and a half that I can provide feedback, I can call the students, I can check on my students, and that's the same thing. We definitely know that it's going to work out for us in that parameter at the high school and the middle school. And we're hoping that can work out for us at the elementary with numbers. We don't know yet, but the feedback is going to come just from teacher interaction. We've told our teachers they have to make contact with the students. We know that not all students need to be contacted every day, but we do it weekly. But also they're going to have office hours that you're going to be able to say, you know, Mr. Wyatt, office hours are from 10 to 10:30. Call me, Zoom me, FaceTime me, whatever avenue we can have to provide feedback to the students. Does that kind of help with what you're talking about, feedback? Yes, and I'll just be honest with you, with distance learning, the way this is set up, I may get in trouble here, but it's not the best thing in the world for young kids K-1 and 2. Because they need that constant feedback because that's where I'm learning to read, that's where I'm doing things, and I need that constant feedback. And are we going to be able to provide that through the distance learning with the younger kids every single day, everything they're doing? I'm going to tell you the truth and say no, because it's not built that way in the rural areas for us to be able to do that. So if I've got to worry of my child, I can't ever answer questions about health because I do not ever want that on my shoulders for help a child. That's the number one thing, and I love children, we want to help them be there. But if you're asking me what is the best thing in the world for the academics of my child, nothing beats sitting in front of the teacher, getting that constant feedback. Distance learning at the young age is going to be hard to provide that every day. Now, it could be some during the week, but every day, I can't tell you that that's going to happen. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's an awesome question. It's a good question. That's probably something we're going to have to work on. Our question is, for students that do the packets, how will they be able to be graded on extracurricular like PE or things like that?
PE is not a graded subject, okay? It's satisfactory. We're doing that to give the kids that extra time that they need to build up those physical or those motor skills and things like that. So you would not get an academic grade for PE or for your creative dramatics. Those things would not be a grade. You're getting the grades through your academic courses. So what we're doing for your PE creative dramatics, we're going to give you things in a packet that would say, these are things we would suggest your child do during the week. These are some activities that you need to think about taking them outside. This is what they would be doing in school. So we're going to give you some things to do like they would. So you would not be graded on those types of things. Those are basically things you need to do to break that 6.5 hours up. That's what we would do, you know, go outside, play basketball, learn about basketball, learn about, you know, baseball or whatever. There's a lot of things that we can teach them and still let them go outside and have a good time. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the question is, if she decides to send her child to school, what safety precautions are we going to be doing? I will tell you, I don't have my notes with me, but off the top of my head, for K-8 classrooms, our students will remain in the classroom. They won't change classes. Normally grades 3 through 8 change for their academic subjects. So to keep the traffic and the moving around in the hallways with passing other children, we're going to have our teachers rotate classrooms rather than our students. We have purchased, I can't tell you how much safety products that will be strategically placed throughout the school. We're talking hand sanitizers, we're talking masks, we're talking gloves. We have purchased disinfectant cordless sprayers that will go in the afternoons and disinfect our classrooms. Teachers will have access to disinfectant spray bottles with towels to be able to wipe their desktops off. And of course, our cleaning crew is going to focus on cleaning our desktops, our doorknobs, those sort of things throughout the day, and certainly in the afternoons and evenings before kids come back. We're going to modify what we can on our lunches, on our lunchrooms. We're going to try to get we want our kids to be able to go to lunch. There may be some schools that have breakfast in the classroom. Students' desks in the classroom will all be facing the same way. So we have asked our teachers to get rid of maybe some furniture that they don't need, so it will allow the desk to be further apart. I'll be honest with you, there's no way, it's not even practical to tell you that a school can keep students 6 foot apart all day. We're going to do our best to keep them at least arm's length away from each other when we do transition time and make those changes. So a lot of safety, it's not going to be school as usual. There's going to be a lot of different modifications and safety measures put in place, and we're going to do everything we can to keep kids safe in school. Our first 2 weeks at school for distance learning, our first week for school is going to be modified. So if you're coming traditional schedule, so for instance on August 3rd, 5th graders will come. On Tuesday the 4th, 4th graders, 3rd graders, 2nd, 1st, and all the way down to 1st. Kindergarten and pre-K have a different schedule. We published that. We'll be glad to answer questions on that too. But this will allow that first day for a single grade level. For instance, on that August 3rd, 5th graders will be the only ones in the building, and they will spend the day. First of all, we got to get the kids back in here and make sure they're okay socially, emotionally, and get to know them again. It's been a long time since our teachers have seen our kids, and they want to. The ones when we ended on March 16th, we didn't even get to say bye to them. So you've got teachers that had them last year that want to see them again and try to tell them bye and see how they're doing. And then their new teachers get to see them. Then we'll spend that day, the first day, with them being the only ones in the building, learning how we're going to do our daily hand washing, how we're going to line up and go to lunch, how we're going to just make it throughout the day, because it's not going to be business as usual. So that will slow things down and do that the first week. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Two good questions. First question, they should not be penalized no matter where they go. If you decide to do distance learning and you want your child to come back in January and they're not where they need to be academically, I don't know of a teacher that's not going to work hard and try to fill in those learning gaps and get them where they need to be. So you're just part of the school system like any other child. If you decide to do distance learning, I mean, it's not even going to reflect on their record that you did distance learning. There'll be grades there just like the work that went to school. So there should not be any problem there with down the road where you want to go. Second question. His other question was, what happens if we have a child that, God forbid, gets sick or, has a positive case of COVID in the classroom? I can't give you that answer yet. We have what our procedure will be. I will tell you that tomorrow, and one of our school nurses is here. There's two of them. Who are you? I can't tell who you are. Oh, okay. There's two school nurses here. Sorry. This mask, I know she was. We're blessed in our school system to have a school nurse and RN nurse at every school. We have a conference call tomorrow with a regional health center in office in Jackson. Every school director in West Tennessee, along with our local health department, has a call at 2:30, and we're hoping those questions like you just asked are going to be answered because we need guidance. We're educators, we're not in the health field, so we need guidance as to what we do. Now, I can tell you what I've read on some suggested things that with us not changing classes, we would look, what I have seen suggested would be if we had a child that was tested positive in third grade in one particular classroom, that particular classroom would more than likely have some time out of school. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the entire school, but I don't know that yet. I'm going to wait to see what we learn tomorrow from the conference call, and that will be hopefully part of our next update that we share as far as the guidelines and protocol. But we will err on the side of safety. Good question. Good question. She says, what if that kid rides the bus? We are going to provide transportation on the bus. I'm assuming that probably transportation on the bus might be down some this year. That's up to parents if they want to put their child on the bus. I think the bus is going to, just like the school for now, recommend masks. Not required yet. Of course, we outsource transportation. We would, of course, under the law, we can't say names, but we notify the health department, I think, and they in turn make some notifications, but we'll have to work on the specifics on that too, but we would have to not be on the bus. Yes, ma'am. Good question. Is there anything for pre-K at distance learning? No, ma'am, there's not. Pre-K is volunteer pre-K, so it's going to be all we can do K through 12 distance learn. But right now, pre-K would not be included on distance learning. That's a good question. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Traditional schedule, we still will do intervention. It'll be a different look. It won't be in a small room where they can all sit close, but we will still continue the intervention on the traditional schedule. So that that won't be the information. The principals are here, but we're going to put that. I'm not sure if we worked out, or have we worked out if intervention goes to the classroom or do they come out?
Well, we're looking at some small groups. We may, depending on the school,
Depending on the size.
way we go, we're looking at either doing it in the classroom or we can take just a few, nobody's in the hall, maybe go to a room, we can work with them individually, one-on-one, to meet the needs that they have. So each school is working on that plan right now, because we're trying to eliminate as much traffic as we can. So like we know we have to go to lunch, we know we have to go to maybe some PE, so
So if I'm teaching just a regular lesson, which every child is taught at a high quality education, they're going to get what we call tier 1 instruction. If a child has a 504 or an IEP that they have to have special accommodations, we're going to know that. So when I make my assignments, I can assign Mr. Davis something totally different than Mr. White. So if I have a child that has a 504 or an IEP that might have some type of accommodation, I can make sure that his assignment or her assignment is going to have that accommodation in the assignments that they're actually doing the work. So we do have that capability of putting that into these programs. So maybe, I guess that answers your question. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. PE and playground time is going to be different. I mean, I don't know. I think they've kind of met on that, and it's not going to be the same. We're not just going to go out on the building slides and hang on the monkey bars and stuff. PE is going to be different. It's going to have a different look to it. We do. We all agree. I think y'all agree. Kids are going to have a little bit of time to get out and stretch, get a little exercise, but it's going to have to be in a modified way, in a safe way. It's a good question. What we can say, like the rugs, I've asked them to take the rugs out of the rooms where you can sit down all in a group on the rug. It's just going to be different. It's going to have to be different for now until we feel it's safer and we kind of get a little more clearance that it's safer. But traditional kindergarten with all of them sitting real close next to the teacher and the teacher reading books, probably not going to happen. Yes, ma'am. We're going to work with you. We got to use common sense. We're all in this together. We're going by what the state says, and we have to, but we also have to use common sense. We understand things like that are going to happen. We're not out to try to put you in truancy court or anything like that. We're going to talk to you. We're going to call you. We're going to make sure everything's okay. We're going to use common sense. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What we haven't 100% what we call a hybrid schedule. You hear that term a lot, a hybrid schedule. If we get to the point where we've been told if you decide to go traditional schedule and we have to maybe get our buildings at 50% capacity and lower the capacity of the schools, we have really zeroed in on a week on, week off. Because you got to think about, I understand the burden of every time I call school off, parents are trying to work and make a living, and a lot of them don't have childcare. And I understand that burden that it puts on parents. So that's a big factor, but we also want it to be safe when they come to school. So one of the things that we think would be less confusing if we have to go to a hybrid model, because I think it's going to be hard for parents to get child care, 2 days this week, 3 days this week, and keeping up with what day your child's supposed to go would be a nightmare. So we have really discussed mainly a week on, week off. That way you can still get your child's food easier. You're not running back and forth to school 2 or 3 days a week to get the breakfast and lunches. It would be easier to send work home for a week if you're having to do packets. But that's the hybrid model that we talk about if we have to go to 50% capacity. Yes, sir. Good question. He's asking will there be temperature checks. We purchased a no-touch thermometer for every teacher that has students at 8 o'clock in the morning. I can't guarantee that we'll check them before they walk in the building because we don't have the staff to cover all the doors, but every teacher will have a thermometer in their classrooms that will be able to check temperatures in the first period of the day. And I will tell you, with our nurses here, we met today at one of our nurse clinics. we're looking to modify their rooms to be able to have an area that will, if we had a child that had a temperature of 104 or higher, that they would go to the nurse's office and basically be, you know, quarantined or be able to be put by themselves there with the nurse and have us basically like a clear shower curtain or something around them, so that until their parents got there to get them, we would keep it that way, try to keep it safe. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And he's saying if you have a child that maybe is any child is struggling on one particular thing, there's going to be children that go in distance learning that don't need a lot of help. I mean, they're just self-motivated. They can do the work. You know, they might be every now and then. We're still going to check on them. But I think the focus will be the learning gaps, and as they need it, would require more. That's where we would go with it. And if, you know, student A doesn't need quite as much help, then rather than spend the 10, 15 minutes there, we might shift 10 minutes of that time over to student B that needs it. So I'm hoping we're using common sense on that too. A lot of good questions. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Distance learning will be flexible, and it will be, you got to keep in mind, teachers, we got to keep our teachers in our prayers. It's going to be an unbelievable year for our teachers. They're going to have kids with them in the classroom. A lot of them will have responsible for distance learning students. It's going to be an unbelievable year. If anybody's up to it, teachers are up for the challenge, and I think we have some wonderful teachers. But your question is yes, you will have the flexibility to be able to, you know, you may have a child that works better in the morning, and you may have some that doesn't work as well in the morning, that works better about midday and wants to work that time. So the one thing you got to remember is if the teacher's got a planning period at a certain time, that's when they're going to be available. So you have to kind of work around that. And that's the reason I don't know that I've told you, but distance learning will actually, assignments and actual school work from the teachers will start on the week of August the 17th. We got to have a couple of weeks there to get touch base with the parents that are doing it, set all the legwork up, and get going on that. So that'll give us a little bit of time. We'll have to really push to get that in, but we can do it. Again, we're up to about 500 students that are looking to go this route, if that's official, but we'll make it happen. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Ms. Cole, you might have to help me on this one. Did you hear the question?
It will be on an individual basis that they will either Zoom with you or you make a phone call, or you can bring the child in just for that service during the school day. That's whoever her speech therapist is will reach out to you. I had a meeting with them today actually. We'll reach out to those folks and offer the bring-in service for them to come in to our school building just for that service, just into their room, do the therapy, and then they leave. But there's also the Zoom option for those that don't feel comfortable bringing that child in. So we've got a few options. They will be reaching out to you once we get the full list of who all is doing the distance learning. But it's all going to be on the individual, depending on the child.
Yes, ma'am. every day or once a week for speech therapy, or is it depending on what, depending on what the IEP costs? Yeah, it would be depending on what the individual student's IEP costs. Yes, ma'am. Question is, if you quarantine, have to quarantine the class, will they go to the distance learning? We're gonna work that out, but my initial thoughts would be 14 days is a long time to be out of school. So we're gonna figure out something to keep them engaged. As long as they feel like working, I mean, parents will be the judge of that as far as being sick, but, and I'm gonna let Mr. White, but I think 14 days is a long time to not be doing some schoolwork.
The reason we're doing this format is that at any point in time in the school year, something could have an outbreak, and we have to send all of our students home. And let's say that we're in week 11, well, they should be able to log on to all their classes and say, okay, we're in week 11, I can go click week 11, and I can start doing the work. And that's the reason it's going to take a lot of work up front with their teachers. That's why we're trying to get everything in sync. So if a class were to have to go home and quarantine for 14 days, they shouldn't miss any work. We could just put them on the distance learning, and that one class that had those kids in it, that teacher would be able to keep up with them, and they can see exactly the same thing that the distance learner. They would still be in school, but they can keep their learning going that way. And this also gives us a lot more options when kids are sick and absent and different things. That when we get this bill for the future, this is going to be a big program for us.
This whole year may be unstable. We're gonna make it look good. Right. Yep. We're gonna do our very best. That's all I can tell you at this moment. We'll give you some more information once we get those specific. And that's a good question. We're gonna roll our sleeves up and work. We're gonna do our very best to work with parents and make it happen. Right. That is our goal, yes. Kids staying, doing the distance learning, would be doing what the kids are doing in tradition, yes. For the most part, yes. Yeah. Again, the question on what happens if a child has fever or sick, I assure you, I can't answer specifics yet until I have that conference call tomorrow. I need some more guidance. I know I've talked to other directors just this week, and everybody's I wish they'd had this call about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I mean, things are changing pretty rapidly. But I don't, at this point, can't tell you what our procedure protocol will be officially until we see what the regional health office in Jackson says tomorrow. We'll put that information out just as quick as we can. I assure you. Yes, ma'am. Question, that's a good one. No. Question is, if she has to work 1 day a week or something, and some of the work has to be done on Saturday, that's good. That's fine. We're gonna make it work. Again, we're gonna revert back to common sense and make this thing work. We're gonna work. Yes, ma'am. Okay. It's all right. Question is, with distance learning starting on August 17th versus August 3rd, like traditional, will the school calendar still apply like fall break, Christmas break? That's an excellent question. I'm gonna say we'll make it work, and the calendar would be.
Yeah, it would be about the same thing, because even though the distance learning is not starting until the 17th, there's things we've got to do preliminary. We've got to train the kids how to use the system. We've got to train the parents. So they're in, like that first week that we're only taking a grade at a time. So academically, they're gonna be county present. The next week, we gotta test them in Easy CBM, the pre-test. So they're actually doing things too. So they will legitimately be on the same schedule as a kid in regular class. So I would say that we could work that to where their calendar follows
Keep us,
the same as everybody.
try to be sane, we're not gonna run two different calendars, school calendars, I don't see us doing that, I promise you, we're gonna do well to do the calendar we're doing now, so we're gonna figure out a way to keep everybody on the school calendar. The first 2 weeks is just gonna be a little bit different, get things going, but we'll make it work. Yes, ma'am. Question. So, have you got that worked out, Mr. Academic?
The first,
They're just like everybody else, the first 2 weeks, they're working on, the first week, we're trying to do the protocol on how to stay healthy in school. We gotta teach them, sanitizing, getting to the lunchroom. The second week, we're working on doing the easy CBM testing. We're still checking on the well-being of the child, and we talked about it, so really, the new academic learning could not possibly start till August the 17th for all students. So I mean, we've got to find out where the gaps are for all of our kids. So it's going to take us a couple of weeks to be able to find that. So that's why we pushed it back to the 17th. We can start building that platform. And we've told a lot of our teachers to think about the 17th being the day that we actually get in to start with our curriculum. Because it's going to take us 2 weeks to get to the point. So that's why we want to stay consistent with everybody. Give us those 2 weeks. The same as we're waiting on guidance as well. So we'll have all that when it comes out from our health departments. Because they're going to make us rely a lot on our health departments, regional, local, and state. So we're going to have to rely on them quite a bit for a lot of answers.
It's one of these deals where you can't just make up the rules as you go. I know I'll tell you, even in flu season, regular flu season, it's been a measuring stick of when our system is about 15% out absentee, then we have to call school off. So there's guidelines that we go by, and you can't just, make it different day to day or week to week, but you gotta have some guidance and things that you typically are not doing outside of education. Yes, ma'am. So the question is, distance learning is not her first option, but she doesn't want to miss the timeline. And if she signs her child up and then next week she wants to pull back and say, oh, okay. Yeah. So let me get your question. Understand. Right. Okay. So are you asking though if you we hadn't actually probably talked about that, but I guess the thing is to stay in distance learning, there's got to be a cutoff time so we do the schedule. To come back out, there obviously would have to be a cutoff time too. I'll have to put that information out. Let's study on that just a little bit to see. We don't know what tomorrow holds, so right now we're looking at August 3rd. Until we know different, that's what we're going to stick with, but that's a good question. Concern of what's coming in the next 2 weeks and say, but the governor can step in any time and tell us what we're going to do, and certainly we're going to follow his recommendation. if something like that major shifts and happens, we're gonna have to work with you. I mean, again, we're gonna have to use common sense. This is uncharted water for all of us. So we're gonna work with common sense. Yes, if we have to close school, we're all going distance learning. That's why it's so important for our teachers to get the experience in the school classroom and be ready at a minute's notice. We sat last year on March 16th and had no idea. The state's not going to let us just take March to May off anymore. There's going to have to be some distance learning for everybody. So, yeah. I'm not going to say there's no option. Her question is if she signs up by Friday, like we've asked you to, so that we can make those plans, are you locked in to distance learning? At some point, I guess we need to put that information out, and we will. There has to be a date where you're going to have to stick with it. Because we got a plan for it one way or another. Because you're either going to have to go, depending on our teachers, who's doing the virtual and who's doing the regular. And we got to balance our classrooms out. So I'm going to say now, Friday's going to have to be the deciding day. Because we're going to be pushed to get schedules ready in time. So, unless the governor steps in and we have some kind of earth-shattering news, I'm going to say, once you tell us by Friday at 4, let's stick with it. If you go, now keep in mind, if you don't sign up by Friday and you say you're going to start school August 3rd, you can always come out and do distance learning. So keep that in mind. That might be your option. That's kind of, but we got a plan one way or another, which we're out to go. So Friday's it. Friday's the Saturday. Yes, ma'am. 3rd grade on testing, state testing, or 2nd grade now. And one of the things he talked about is the state's going to provide, let me let you talk about it. The state's going to provide the initial test just to see where we are since we've been out, and see where the learning gaps are, see where each child is.
We definitely know that they're going to pre-assess grades 3 and above. We don't know about 2nd grade yet, but when we do the spring testing, we will be testing 2nd graders this year. So it'll be 2nd grade and up through our high school ELC test. So other testing, we still have to do other testing in the school, but statewide, we'll do 2 through ELCs.
Oh, making us work tonight. A lot of good questions. Okay. Yes. Question is, if a parent has to work, which most parents do that I know, has to work, make a living, and provide for their families, and they work 7 to 2, and they come home at 3 and work with their child from 3 to 10 for school, most definitely. You've got that flexibility if you go distance learning. We just got to keep pace with work. You can't get behind, and you got to find the time each day. It could be Saturday, it could be Sunday, not do Thursday, Friday, but we got to stay on pace.
Mr. Davis, I want to go back to the question we asked about
Yes.
Saturday a while ago. You gotta be careful because the teachers,
When we set the virtual or the distance learning up, teachers could set timelines. Like this assignment is due by 11:59 p.m. on that day. But if something happens and you're keeping up with your work and something like that happens and they have to do it on a Saturday and it was due on a Friday, that's why teachers have office hours. Say, hey, listen, this happened. I didn't get to get it submitted to you on Friday. Can we work on Saturday? That's why it's important for the parent and the teachers to stay in communication, because we will set time frames and deadlines on assignments when they're due, and that's the way that the Google Classroom works. So you could be kicked out, like you couldn't submit it, but something like that happens. So if something like that happens, make sure you're staying in communication with the teachers.
Probably nothing more important than communication, but for this coming year, communication is going to be even more important. Yes, ma'am. question is, if they've already filled out the registration form to do, distance learning, and between now and Friday, they want to change their mind, they need to call the board office and tell them to take their name off the list. Yeah, good question. We will have resources to, I know we talked. You may want to answer this question. I mean, I know we have resources. Yep. Perfect. There you go. Make it smaller, please. Real quickly, I want to thank Ms. Betsy Baker. She's there. She's our pre-K supervisor and our RTI supervisor as well. We got some teachers that are here. Our principals are here. Mr. Talk to Mr. Miller, Mrs. Jennifer Copeland, our SPED, Mr. Miller, Mr. White, and our some more teachers over here. And I want to thank Mr. John Miller and Mr. Robert King for setting all this up tonight and continue to answer your questions. Yes, ma'am. I missed that first one. What? Yeah, okay, so we got multiple kids, 7 kids. I'm impressed. The question is, she has 7 kids, 1 computer. Obviously, no way they can all share that computer in one given day. Probably need to designate 1 or 2 that's going to go, I would say more than likely, designate 1 or 2 that, because in realistic terms, you can probably only share a couple of kids per day. And then I would say the other children would need to go in packets until we can get our devices in. And then if you still want to distance learning from January to May, we're going to have additional devices to be able to handle it. Okay. Yeah, we'll work with it. We'll work with it. Yes, ma'am. Say again, I'm sorry. Good question. If you have multiple children that to talk on the phone to, maybe more than 1 teacher, so their planning times could be different. So, but hopefully that will work out. We'll just have to be flexible in the sense that we'll try to make it fit the schedule if we have that situation. That's probably going to be rare, but it's probably going to come up. So we'll have to make it work. When we uncover 1 rock on this, there's about 6 or 8 more rocks to think about. So, yes, ma'am. It's a little different than elementary and middle and high school. But the question is, will each child be assigned to 1 teacher? For elementary, I don't think
Well, ideal situation is,
yes, we would love to have 1 teacher responsible for all of our distance learning kids per grade. Like I told you before, budget-wise, being able to hire that many, but it all depends on the numbers. That's why it's so important that we know how many students are going to distance learning, because it's going to help us with scheduling, and we might can work it out. Now, in middle school, I can tell you the way things are going to work out there. Your distance learning students would have a teacher per subject. Like they'd be on a specific team. High school, if I'm taking Algebra 1, they're going to try to put all of the kids that are taking distance learning with 1 teacher in Algebra 1 as a 9th grader, so that we can have 1 teacher responsible for those. It's going to work out that way, but again, that's in academic classes, but when you start talking about the high school with a lot of other things, it may not work, but that's first grade. The 2 scenarios would be if we had some teachers where we could take 1 that's responsible for kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, child is at North, we've got 5 kindergarten teachers, and we have 10 distance learning students that are in kindergarten at Northside. We can give each teacher 2. And that way, the only teacher is only responsible for keeping up with just 2 students instead of all 10. So that would be a scenario. The best scenario would be able to take a teacher and say, you've got all of kindergarten or first or whatever. That's why it's so important that we know the cutoff dates. That's what he's talking about.
Yes, if you decide to go back in January, then you would go back to your summer school, and you could know the schedule before you went back. Yep. And that's January 5th is the start date of our second semester. Yes, ma'am. They go right back. As long as, the question is, if they're not going to a school that they're zoned to, they distance learn, they want to come back, and they go back to that school, as long as the only way you're going to get kicked out of if you're grandfathered in and you're going to a school outside where you're zoned, there's only 3 ways you can get remanded back to your zoned school: bad attendance, bad grades, and discipline issues. That's the only 3 things. And we don't have that in Hardin County. All our kids act good. We don't have any problems like that. Especially your kids. And those that are watching too. We're recording this, so we're going to play this tomorrow. Any other questions? Great question. I appreciate y'all coming. Had no idea if any parents would even show up. I understand the importance of this decision. I know that you're struggling with it. I know that most of you would agree that the best scenario is for children to be in school around other kids, with the teacher, going through a normal walk of life. I get it. It's not normal right now. You've got to make those decisions that's best for your child. You may have parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles that live in a home that have health issues. That's why it's got to be your decision. We don't know all those issues. You do. And we're going to support whatever decision that you make, and we're going to work with you. I promise you. It'll be like an auction, going once. Any other questions? We'll hang around. I'm going to put my mask on if you want to come up and ask me any questions. And any of these folks are fair game. So thank you for coming. Listen, what I mean is what I say now. My doors are always open. Feel free to call and come by and any questions you have between now and Friday. Friday's the deadline, okay? Try to make up your mind on that. Thank y'all.